Hi guys, it's Oli from Season. I'm excited to be joined today by journalist and adventure travel writer Tommy Walker. Tommy, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Cheers.
Whereabouts are you at the moment, Tommy?
Yeah, so hence the sigh. I'm in Hong Kong, and been in Hong Kong now. It's my third year. Sort of been living and based here, and yeah, I mean it's obviously in the news for political reasons. So it's quite a historic time to be here.
And what so you're covering the news over there, and you've been out like most days actually on the streets and covering it. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean this year has been a little bit different because obviously COVID-19. It's obviously restricted a lot of people's movements worldwide. Hong Kong's been no different, even though the virus hasn't hit here it hasn't been a huge catastrophe here. The virus's numbers are quite low, just over 1,000, only 5 deaths the last time I checked. So although it's not been as crazy as last year, there has been some restrictions to go out, and this has affected the protests. Basically, the social distancing laws here, like there is everywhere, and protests generally gather a fair few number of people. So at any opportunity, the authorities and the Hong Kong police have been arresting protesters because of the social, and they've been putting it down to social distancing laws. So that's obviously put down the regularity of the protests in comparison to last year when it was literally 5 days a week almost. So yeah, still in Hong Kong for now, and you know, have been covering the protests whenever they've been going on, but they haven't been as regular as last year.
Right. And so before that, I'd love to go back to, so you've been traveling and you've been living away from the UK for, was it like 8 years now, or?
Yeah, long time. Left in 2012. Left in 2012 for reasons. Always wanted to travel, and you know, planned a 3-month trip, and for one reason or the other, that got extended, and then here I am 8 years later. So it's yeah, actually it's crazy when I think of that, when I say that, because yeah, it's been quite an epic time. So yeah, essentially been you know, traveling. You know, sometimes I've been physically traveling to countries at a time, maybe in my 20s doing backpacking trips. Obviously, and I've been living away as well. So like I said, I've been based and living in Hong Kong for 3 years. This is my 3rd year, sorry. I was in Australia for about 3 years too. So I have been basing myself at places as well. So yeah, that's yeah, it's been it's not a normal 8 years as what most people would live, but that's just the way it is for me, you know.
And like what sort of traveling were you doing? So you grew up in England, and then sort of what was the itch? Why did you want to sort of start traveling?
Yeah, I mean, from the northeast of England, if anyone knows, from Teesside. If anyone doesn't know where Teesside is, it's in between Newcastle and Leeds, northeast. Anyway, yeah, always had a sense of adventure and wanted to explore when I was younger. Had a lot of family who had lived and still are living worldwide, so that was a big influence for me. When I was younger, my uncle used to live in Hong Kong, and he used to come home with crazy stories of Southeast Asia, and you know, so that had not immediate family, but obviously relatives who had worldwide experiences. So that kind of put the curiosity to travel in my head from a very young age. And when I first left the UK 8 years ago, you know, I was 24, 25, and done a backpacking trip to Southeast Asia. It's most people's first trip. so especially from the West, like from Europe, and that was amazing. Like the best times of my life. Just the eye opener to be in such a different set of cultures and countries. So backpacking, but the most important thing is that a lot of people do them trips and they can go to the, the well-trodden places. But I always had this sense of curiosity of going to places which were off the beaten track, always. So I made sure I went to Myanmar, Burma at that point when there was hardly any tourists going. Spent 2 months in India. And this was all included in one big Southeast Asia and South Asia trip. So I always believe, see the best things, see the on the beaten track things, as well as the off beaten track. Just do both. It's fun. You know what I mean? But there's no travel for me without doing it a bit differently to some like obscure places. I think that's the essence of travel, personally. But some people think differently. But that's my essence of travel: to see things which are, things that are different, places that their stories haven't been told, and maybe a little bit more riskier and dangerous. But I think that's part of travel. That's what you're supposed to seek, is something unfamiliar. So yeah, first year in Southeast Asia was great, and just been continuing on from there, really.
And like looking back, like when you first started off, when you were traveling and going to these like off the beaten path locations, I mean, were you thinking, okay, this is, I don't know if that concept existed then, but this is like dark tourism and, going to more sort of unusual destinations? Was that something that you were kind of seeking out, or it just happened to be, you were in these countries and you thought, okay, I'm going to check out something?
No, there was definitely a purpose to find that, for sure. For me, there was definitely a purpose to be able to experience, the mainstream places, if you like. And even then, in 2012 and before, obviously, these places weren't mainstream. It just depends on who you are and how you travel, like, a lot of Brits go to go on holiday, which is great and awesome, and we all love that. So going to Thailand would still might be, wild to a lot of people who normally go on holiday to Spain or Greece, and that's fine. So it depends on your perception of things. But, I always seek to go to the places which were, furthermore off the beaten track. Myanmar, formerly Burma, that was the first taste I got that was really like, I mean, I think I saw 3 Western tourists in 3 weeks. So that was the real sense of like being in a place where you were the minority. And you got to remember as well, at the beginning, well, a lot, if you don't remember, off, no one knows, but back in 2012, social media was obviously around, but it wasn't like the boom that it is now. And it's not, it wasn't as, addictive as it is now, if you like. Everyone's on the phones and stuff. Back then there was people, it wasn't so much, there was a sense of it, but it wasn't as much. So, it was definitely less crowded and less Instagram models and, bloggers, if you like. Obviously, I wasn't even a travel writer then. So that sense was really interesting, to feel a place like that. And, it was, you felt anxious at times too, for sure. But that's the reward. The reward is overcoming that. And that's why I've always liked that sense of risk or sense of different, because of the reward to see it and push yourself to a limit, a personal limit, and then look back on that. I think that's a really cool thing. And it's personal experience. It's really good to open your eyes, so to speak. So yeah, I definitely had a focus on going to them sort of places, which are off the beaten track, for sure.
And were you on your own, or would you go with?
Yeah, I mean, I went out on my own. As you probably see in this interview, I can talk a lot. So, I'm not afraid to approach people. If I need to, I feel comfortable with doing that. And I'm absolutely fine being on my own. So yeah, I went out by myself, and you know, places like Southeast Asia, it's such an incredible social scene for independent and adventure travelers. So you'll always meet people that you can bond with in some aspect. I was lucky actually because I met a bunch of travelers from all over the world in the first 3 months, and a lot of us still we meet every year to this day, you know, and there's such a special relationship still that we still message. We were just messaging the other day, an hour ago on WhatsApp. We have like a group. So yeah, I mean, went out on my own, but you meet people, you know, and that's part of traveling solo and traveling, you know, you meet people from around the world and you get to know them. And you know, I'm lucky because I've kept in contact with a lot of people who I've met on that initial trip, and some of them are my best friends. So you know, it's you can go out alone, but you're never alone. That's like the saying within like the travel communities. You're never alone if you don't need to be, if you don't want to be. Yeah.
And from so from that first trip, you went around Southeast Asia, and was there any kind of standout, I guess, crazy times that you had, like, or sort of things that you remember, like looking back and thinking, yeah, that was pretty wild?
Yeah, I mean, a few. I mean, one which was quite embarrassing, but I actually kind of slipped down a waterfall in northern Thailand, and that was at the very start, and I was just way too hungover, and we went to this waterfall, and I tried to jump over the mouth of it, which was only like a yard or like a couple of, you know, feet, 1 foot. And it's a small waterfall. It's not very big, but I slipped and I kind of went down, you know, the mouth of it. And quick thinking, I put my heel up and it's kind of stopped me on this little verge of rock. And then the rock was so smooth, I couldn't clamber back up because there was no grip. So my friends had to try and pull me up, and eventually it was like this human chain, which included like loads of young Thai kids who were just like, it was like this human chain pulling me up. And that was it was a scary moment because it was the first thing that happened to me that I didn't expect it to, you know, like kind of slipping down a waterfall. I mean, if I fell down, I probably would have broke my leg. There's no doubt. I wouldn't have died because it wasn't as high as it looked. Super high when I was in the actual moment. I was looking down and I was just like, and I was shouting up, I'm just going to jump. But then it was just pure rock. So, you know, I was barefoot and, you know, so it wasn't the greatest idea to do that. And thankfully I didn't. So that was the first moment that kind of scared me. And then, yeah, probably like a week later, I had a motorbike crash in the islands in Thailand, which again, it's like a common thing. Kind of embarrassed to talk about that because it's not the first time you'll hear that. But
like Koh Samui or somewhere.
Koh Phangan, you know, Koh Phangan in Southern Ireland, some of the roads are like this, you know, they're super vertical. So I was just going down down a hill too fast, and it was sandy, and I just skidded. And yeah, I was lucky really because I jumped again. Quick instinct. I don't know. I mean, maybe this is how I remember it, but I jumped off just before like the bike went on the ground, and that kind of cushioned my fall, so to speak. But I still grazed all my like right arm and my back, and I've actually got a tattoo on my shoulder, and like there's still a little bit of that's faded from that crash. Yeah, and look, yeah, these are rookie mistakes at the time, you know, but they were moments that I still remember that were, you know, they stayed with me a little bit, and it was almost, you know, nature's way or traveling's way of telling me that just slow down a bit, you know, like things aren't, you know, things can happen. So they were two moments. I mean, there was incidents in India which was pretty intense. Yeah, I mean, I run a overnight bus one night going from I think it was on the west side of India, and we were going to Udaipur, which is like near Rajasthan or in Rajasthan. It's like a 16-hour journey, and it was with like a British traveller and we met this Irish girl and German girl on there, and we're all obviously we're the only 4 Western travelers on this sleeper bus in India, 16-hour journey, and the driver was driving crazy. Like, he was driving so erratic that it was actually worrying. And at that point, I'd taken many bus rides, so it wasn't like the first time of doing a long overnight journey. And the driver was just so erratic, and I asked him to slow down, but he was smoking something. Like, literally, he was smoking something. It wasn't a cigarette. It was, so I don't know. I don't know if he was smoking something he shouldn't have been. But anyway, in this bus journey, ensued, and my friend lost his wallet somehow, kicked up a big fuss, and then ended up getting into this huge argument with 2 local Indian men. And it was a bit of a skirmish, and everyone was arguing and stuff. And at one point, one of the girls, German girls, she's blonde hair, she was on a sleeper bed, and she was just like on her sleeper bed, which is like a top bunk bed on this big overnight sleeper bus. And then, like, just one man, Indian man, just climbed up and tried to get into bed with her. And it was like super creepy. Like, you wouldn't see that. I had to drag him down. And I was like, what are you doing? You can't, super random, weird bus journey that happened. And we eventually ended up getting off in like the middle of the night. Luckily, we were in Jaipur, which is like another, or Jodhpur, one of them, which is like another popular tourist town. So there's moments like that were pretty like, wow, you don't know what could have happened,
Yeah. And do you think, like, now with having those experiences, that things are going to happen, and almost not preempting them, but sort of having that in the back of your mind that, like, you're traveling to these different countries, things can happen? And
yeah, I think so. I mean, like, it's everything in life like that is experience, So if I ever travel to a place which is a little bit sketchy, off the beaten track, anything like that can happen, You just got to be prepared for it mentally. You got to be on your toes, be alert, I think. And with all, you just have to be. And there's certain places that you might want to, take further precautions than other places. So yeah, as you get older and more experienced, you do believe it's less likely to happen, because you obviously based that opinion on your own travel knowledge and experience. So, but yeah, it can happen for sure, and that's part of it. Like I said, it's part of traveling. I don't believe traveling is supposed to be all fun and easy, and I just don't think it. That's not the way I think about it. And it might come across as like looking for trouble, but sometimes you just have to deal with whatever's happening in front of you, And yeah, I mean, that's how it is. You go to places that are off the beaten track and not as like yours. There's always potential of risk, for sure. And if you want to do that and you want to risk that, then great, that's your experience. If you don't, then each to their own,
And like knowing that, is there anything that you've always either brought with you in those initial trips, or now looking back, that when you do go traveling to beaten path places, any kind of essentials that you've got to have with you?
When I spent a good year, about 11 months in South America. Went to places, Brazil, which was sketchy in places, Venezuela, Colombia, Bolivia, Paraguay. Certain places, like, I took certain precautions. I mean, like, for example, like, when I was in Venezuela, like, I was told not to wear any jewelry. And I'm not talking like Rolex watches. I'm talking like a $2 digital watch from a Brazilian market that is worth nothing, and when I was in Venezuela specifically, I remember going there in 2014. Now, we all have heard of Venezuela's, problems for whatever reason, one reason or the other. And even then, it was obviously having issues. And back then, when you do the South America circuit, no one really adds Venezuela to their list if you're doing a long trip. Like, if you're doing like a backpacking or a long travel trip, then a lot of people don't really add Venezuela to it. Yeah, they leave it out. Yeah, and I remember people saying, "Why are you going to Venezuela?" Like, it's not, because again, it's people's perception and expectation of what they want from travel. Some people want to do what it's called, or used to be called in Asia, Southeast Asia, the banana pancake trail, I think it is, and then in South America, it's the Gringo Trail, and the Gringo Trail normally consists of like Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and there's certain countries that people don't really add to that. So anyway, I went to Venezuela and I was there, and I bought like a bum bag or a fanny pack, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Actually, I might have one somewhere. Yeah, I have one right here. So like one of these things, and it goes on your waist. And I'd get a smaller one, but I would put all the valuable stuff there.
Yeah.
And then put it down my trousers, on my crotch almost. Certain things like that, just in case that you were to be held at gunpoint or knife point, because that happens, and it's more regular than you think. There's an opportunity, at least you've got a bigger opportunity of not having everything stole from you, And when you're in them countries, if you get your passport, your phone, and your credit cards, your cards taken off you, it's a scary time, really, to get, back on track. So there's little things like that, and I think that's a bit of a common trick, but simple things as well. Again, going back to Venezuela, just not going out at night, or not venturing too far at night. It's just simple stuff, like don't put yourself in that position. So I think, like I said, certain countries require certain safety precautions, and that's kind of how I've played it anyway. So
yeah, and so now, like, and like after that, then you moved to Australia. You said you were living over there for a couple of years.
Yeah, mate. So basically, the chronological timeline of it is, I've done a year on and off, a year almost in Southeast Asia. Then I went to Australia for a year, and I went to South America for a year. Actually, them 3 years were pretty crazy. It was like a real full-on 3 years of like solid, good traveling, and then I went back to Australia for a year and a half and sort of thing. So yeah, kind of based myself in Melbourne, Australia. Really good place to live, lifestyle-wise. A lot of people tend to move there, whether it's temporarily. So it was a really cool experience. Met some amazing people. Thankfully, a lot of people I'd met on the road were moving there anyway, coincidentally at the time. So it was quite very, very easy to settle. Yeah, gorgeous place. It's far away to live somewhere, especially when you're from England. But it's such a, it's the lifestyle. It's just very, it's just a very nice place to live. Good weather, good food, laid back, fun times. It's a great place to be, especially if you're first time traveling or in your 20s. I think like it's a really good place for like for your 20s, early 30s. So it's a cool place to be. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I studied over there. I did uni in Swansea in Wales, and then after that I went to was in the Gold Coast for a year, and then moved back to England, and then we were living in Sydney for about 7 years, and then yeah, Portugal, and then moved back to Europe, and then in Portugal now. But yeah, it's a nice part of the world.
You like the sun and the beach then?
Yeah, that's it. I'm originally from London, and I was sort of commuting to go to the coast to go surfing to Cornwall and Devon and stuff. But yeah, we thought we'd try and settle somewhere a bit closer to the sea. And yeah, just had a question come up from Julie. She was asking, what's the nicest food you've had on your travels? If there's any kind of
what's the worst food?
What's the nicest food you've had? Any kind of
man,
or any country?
Actually, for quality of food and mixture, variety, Melbourne, Australia. Melbourne has very good food because of the variety. You know, you go to some cities in the world, and if they have international food, it might not be as good as obviously the real thing. Not most of the time, it isn't. But Melbourne, maybe I'm a bit biased because I lived there for a while, but just the food quality and variety was really good. If we're talking about a place where was my favorite or very good food for its own cuisine, I mean, I would say Mexico is great because the tacos are like $2 on the street. They were awesome. Obviously, Thailand is known for its food, for its flavor. Vietnamese food's good. I would probably say them three. But again, like if you go to Europe, like Europe's, you know, it might not be as adventurous as some places in the world, you know, especially if you're from Europe, you know, you tend to go further afield to feel that sense of adventure. But, you know, you go to Italy or France, like food's out of this world, you know what I mean? So, you know, but my favorite would be, yeah, let's say there's like 7 in there, right? Mexican, Thai food, and Melbourne food. Yeah,
it's good coffee in Melbourne as well, right?
Great, yeah, God, coffee, yeah. It's a very coffee place. Yeah, I miss the coffee in Melbourne.
Cool, man. And so now, like having 3 years in Hong Kong, I mean, what are your goals? What are you working on at the moment? Are you going to be staying out there, you think, for the time being, or?
Honestly, the Hong Kong thing is a weird thing because again, like it's actually I didn't originally plan to stay for this long, but I'm really am settled within an Asia, like in the region of like Southeast and Northeast Asia. Like I really feel happy to base in there. There's just something about actually just like being a minority, you know, like I kind of like to just get on with my own thing. And, you know, I just like parts of Asia where if you need something done, it can get done, you know. And Hong Kong, you know, my uncle used to live here, so there's always been that intrigue. I came here, didn't expect to last more than a year. Came back for ex-girlfriends at the time and stuff, or an ex-girlfriend at the time. And then because I've been a travel writer now for a number of years and had work in the media, travel related, as well as like content writing, magazine articles published, all of that, blogs. The Hong Kong thing, obviously the protests sparked last summer, and it just, you know, I was asked by a few people. They said, "Well, you've done travel writing and journalism. Do you maybe do that?" You know, and I've delved into other forms of writing before. You know, football to a little bit, but the Hong Kong thing really reached out to me, as it has with many people. It's there's for numerous reasons. Obviously, it's an old British colony, but the actual main reason is the want, or millions of people want a democracy and a free society, and that kind of is something we take for granted, you know, in the West, and that kind of you know, connected with me, and because Hong Kong's such a unique place, because you've got literally 2 systems in one place. You've got China and you know, their system, and then you've got obviously the international side. So it's such a, you know, cauldron of different cultures, and that's why it's just super interesting. So being in Hong Kong, yeah, it's just connected with me so much, and the people of Hong Kong are incredible. They are just so brave and so yeah, they're just so passionate, and it's something I've never witnessed before. And I've been to countries, and most countries I've been to, I really enjoy the locals and their culture, and their own preferences and history. But just the Hong Kong thing, it's like historic times. It's historical times, and it's just to witness a whole city try for change against one of the biggest powers in the world, I mean, you don't walk into that every day, you know. Yeah. You don't. So it's just connected with me and so many other people so much. Obviously, if the viewers don't know, but tonight, tomorrow, there's a new national security law that's going to be passed or has been passed on Hong Kong, which essentially gives Beijing a little more control over Hong Kong. Because their way of living is so different, a lot of people are saying it's the end of Hong Kong. So we are in historic times right now, like right this second. So I don't know how long I'm going to be here for because of that. There's many people leaving, locals, expats, you know, journalists, a lot of people. So it's a weird time, strange time that we'll always look back on. So I don't know. I really don't know. I can't answer that. I really just don't know. I'm just trying to get one day at a time at the moment. So we'll see. But things are changing in Hong Kong. So, you know, it's not going to be like the Hong Kong. If people have visited Hong Kong before in the past,
it's going to be like that.
Hong Kong's changing, you know. So it's you either stick or twist. You know, you stick and you see how it goes, and you twist and you say, you know what, I don't want to be part of a Hong Kong. That's not Hong Kong. So we'll see.
And if people want to follow you, what's the best way of kind of keeping, seeing what's going on? And
yeah, well, obviously travel right now. No one's doing much travel, but the Hong Kong scenario for sure. I think it's best to follow me on Twitter now. You can follow me on Facebook, but I'm having issues with regularly updating on Facebook, so I'll just post my handles. Facebook is tommywalker.co. Instagram is the same, and my Twitter account is Wandering, WANDERING, Walker, WALK, instead of the E, 3R. It's a bit confusing. Wandering Walker, but instead of the E, it's 3. Yeah. The last E in Walker is a 3. I should really change that username. Yeah.
Cool.
But, yeah, anything on Hong Kong, I mean, for now anyway, that's good to follow. And again, I'll be updating them accounts in the future. For any future travels, I post all my travel stuff on there as well. So if people want to follow me and see some photo albums and articles, then yeah, they can do that. They can become a follower.
Anywhere, any kind of spot that is on your bucket list, if there's been a place that you've been wanting to visit that you haven't done yet?
Yeah, huge. Actually, I should have done it I should have at least tried to do it by now. I'm a big, I've got a bit of a fascination with Africa as a whole, no specific country. It's always been like that, the pinnacle of travel for me, because of how, you know, relentless and the size of the continent, you know, and just, I just think for so many different reasons, that the cultural aspects, the heat, the wildlife, the poverty, the social issues, the political issues, the history, everything. I think just Africa has, from a traveler's perspective, I personally think it's the ultimate. It's alongside, yeah, I mean, in terms of the toughest places I'd imagine to travel, I believe Africa and like the Middle East, I think. So Africa's always been there, the Middle East too, but Africa's just that, it's that one that I need 2 years to take away and get away from whatever I'm doing and just travel around and live there and base there. It's just, that's the one. But of course, the more you travel and the more you open your mind to things, there's more places you want to go on individual trips, you know? Yeah. So yeah, I would say Africa. And if I hadn't been to South America, I would probably say South America first, because, but I've spent a lot of time in South America, so Africa, yeah.
Cool. Thanks, man. Well, yeah, I'll be keeping keeping an eye on all the adventures, and yeah, seeing obviously what's going to happen in Hong Kong in the next couple of days.
Yeah, cool, absolutely. Let me know if you want to obviously chat in the future about anything, any future stories or past stories I can remember. But I mean, I've been to North Korea, which we haven't touched on yet, but maybe you can save that for next time. I don't know.
Next time, we'll speak then. Cheers, Tommy.
Cheers, mate. Thanks.